Well, welcome to two of my very favorite readers. It's me, Care, and this is episode 6 of I Care About Books podcast. I am joined by booknotification.com founder Graham McGaw and our entertainment editor, Vince, as well. And Graham, this was your pick this time for Louise Penny's Still Life. And this actually goes back a few years because there's a number of books in sort of this series. And we'll get started. Okay, first, as always, we must say that spoiler alert. There's always going to be spoilers on the I Care About Books podcast. This is a book club, so we are discussing what we have read. And it's important to me that we say that to anybody who might be tuning in and having a listen, because we're going to spoil the end, and this is a whodunit. So now you know, you have been warned. Also on this podcast, we don't shy away from filthy words, because if it fits the mood and it fits the tone, we might let a pirate word slip out here and again. So I think those are all of my just in case warning moments. Let's start with you, Graham. Wait a second. I just saw, look at.
Vince, where's yours? Where's yours, Vince? Not part of the team, eh?
Vince, I'm going to have to send you one.
Actually, I don't like that Waffle House.
As a true American, I got the Waffle House.
That's true, yeah.
In a very Canadian way, I will send you a Handle with Care mug from Canada. How does that sound?
Oh, sounds great.
Okay, let's start with you, Graham. Why did you pick Louise Penny's Still Life?
It's because it's one of the most popular book series by all our readers. Book Notification on my other websites, all the book series and all that. It's the most popular. Everyone loves it. And it had never been picked by any other book clubs, no celebrity book clubs, Richard and Judy, Reese, no one. So I thought we'd be the first book club to pick it.
Well, I'm actually very surprised because I really, really enjoyed this book. Vince, I'm going to throw it over to you. Do you want to try and give us a synopsis of our book? Especially, and I should preface this, I'm kind of giving this to Vince because the book is set in Quebec, and Vince just finished telling us that he's an American. So I think this is fun to throw it over to Vince.
Yeah, it takes place in, it's probably weird for you to hear it, but like to me, it's French Canada.
French Canada.
French Canada, small town that's not on any map. How does that work? And a murder happens of an older lady, and they got to find out who done it. So a detective comes from Montreal, and he meets all the wacky characters in the little town and tries to figure out who done it.
That is quite one of my very favorite tropes, that not only is it a small town, but in this small town are all these characters that have all of these like experiences. It's a very fun little trope, because then you get to like sort of world build at that point as an author, where you get to say, this person never got married, or this person, hated his mother. Like there's all these little things that you can build while you're world building. Graham, tell me about this book in particular. Not only was it something that, people had recommended, but what did you think of the book?
I loved it. I had mentioned on the podcast that I listened to it a few years ago due to everyone recommended it. And while I enjoyed the audiobook experience, for what I do, it's not really one you can listen to. Like, it's not because I listen when I run, and while it's not a cozy mystery, do you hear that, Vince? It's not a cozy mystery.
Well,
I almost brought that up. I was gonna call it a cozy mystery.
For those not sure, he made that mistake in weekly picks. He referred to it as a cozy mystery, and we got quite a few emails from people politely saying it is not a cozy mystery.
It's not.
It is. But it is a mystery set in a cozy setting. That's how I'd put it. It's definitely a dark mystery, but it's set in a very cozy setting. And I love it. So reading it instead of listening to it, I enjoyed it a lot more. And one of the biggest things with my readers over the years that they've said is they go back, when a new book comes out, they go read it, and it's like visiting a family, visiting a friend who they haven't seen for a year. And you totally get that from the very first book, right? Like, it evolved, all the characters, relationship, and so on evolved every year. So it's one where I loved it, and yeah, I'm already looking forward to going to read the second one and revisiting my friends in Three Pines.
Well, we should also mention that you do not have to speak French in order to read this book. There are many French words, phrases that are inserted throughout the book, and some things that the characters say and so on, but you don't have to be French to read this book or enjoy it. So I thought that's a good reminder for anybody that's interested in picking this book up. Now, for Graham and myself, we actually only live about 3 hours away from where this book is naturally set, and I could see it. I've driven through Quebec many, many times, and I could absolutely put Three Pines in my mind visually as to what this would have looked like just outside of Montreal. How about you, Graham?
Yeah, well, actually, while there is nowhere in particular it's based on, it is known as Knowlton, Quebec, I believe. It is I think that's how you pronounce it, Knowlton. That's where a lot of people kind of base it on. And actually, a little bistro opened up there a few years ago, Cafe Three Pines, based on the book and all that stuff. So that's really cool. I think that'd be a road trip down the road at some point to go visit it. And
I want to
you're right.
I need to throw some kudos out to Louise Penny while we talk about this book. I mean, it was a great book. When I say I enjoyed this book, I really, really did. But the characters, there are so many characters in this book. It was like trying to unravel this ensemble cast. And I can only imagine what it must have been for Louise Penny as she was building them. Like, I can only imagine having to have like a board on the wall with like the characters and all their attributes and their family members, because as we're talking about it being a small town, I can imagine that Louise Penny wanted you to really feel like you were connected to each of these characters, and each of them are so fleshed out so well. You got an idea as you were reading from each of them, and even their intonations, the way they spoke, their mannerisms and so on, you could kind of already catch a vibe just from the character development that you read from Louise Penny. What do you think, Vince?
Yeah, that's good, especially with Jane, who dies in the opening pages. You do really get to know her and love her. Yeah, I mean, it's like a bunch of unique characters in a wacky small town setting. It's like almost like a cozy to me. But yeah, there's some great characters. I do think I don't know what's his name? Ben? Is that the killer?
The killer.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert.
There's a spoiler.
I do think he kind of stuck out like a sore thumb the whole time as a creep. So
right. I'm sorry to interject, but did you not pick that up from the beginning that it had to have been Ben?
Right. That's kind of how I felt. But there is a lot of good characters. There's I don't know. Maybe you two could answer me on this. Like, it does seem like almost like xenophobia. Like, oh, it's an Inglés.
En anglais.
Canadian, like there's French Canadians and there's like English Canadians, and every once in a while there's like a line like, oh, classic English piece of crap, like this is awkward.
A little bit. What did you think, Graham? Did you find that at all, that maybe there was some "we hate English people" narrative in the book?
There was definitely that type of vibe to it, which, knowing Quebec fits pretty well. I had no problem with what it was. It was pretty standard, yeah.
And how about you, Graham? What did you think of the characters? This really was an ensemble. Like, every character had its own story. Every character had its own narrative throughout the book. Especially as they're trying to get to know everybody in town, they really you knew who everybody was.
Yeah, and she did a fantastic job with that, I think, with establishing the relationship, the history, and so on, without it going overboard. I think, I've only read I listened to the first and second one, but I feel like the actual story going forward, the mystery or the murder, whatever, will be the backdrop to the actual characters themselves, and that's what people care about. And I liked how characters were different. For example, Yvette Nicole, the rookie cop. So many rookies are protagonists or characters that we root for. But that wasn't the case here. Like Louise Penny, right from the get-go, when you meet Yvette and she's getting the correct coffee order for like a mash and all that, and you're like, okay, this is the character I'm going to like. Instead, she makes her deeply unlikable, you know, like,
Right.
and
Maybe
that was
that's why I
very.
liked her so much. I gotta say this. She was my favorite character in the book. And maybe because you don't root for her. And I think that's what made her character stand out to me so much, is I was like, you know what? I actually don't like this girl. Like I know this girl. I feel like I've met this girl in real life, and she's the kind that you don't want to be friends with. And maybe that's why she's my favorite character. She was so well developed. And I, as a reader, kept being like, come on, man, shut your mouth. Stop talking like that. You're being inappropriate. Can you not catch the drift? And then at the end, there was at the end of one of the chapters where she was getting scolded by Garmond, and she just finishes it with whatever. Like, whatever. I don't care. And that's like the last word of that particular chapter. And I just went, Yvette Nicole is probably one of my favorite characters throughout a series. How about you guys?
Yeah, that was weird. You know, I mean, I know it's a series, but just reading like a book, it's weird that she never like had any change of heart, like at all. It was just like she always remained kind of the punching bag. And there's a while where you're like, maybe they're being too hard on her. Maybe they're being too hard on her. And it's just like, no, she deserves all this, and she's a bad person. It's like, that's a really weird
No, she's a dick.
characterization in the book.
She really is. She's so arrogant.
Right.
I think that's refreshing, right? Because it's like there are real people like that. There was no redemption arc, you know. That's the thing. And I do wonder if Louise always, planned for long series and all that with her and featuring. But it's really interesting to slightly off topic there, but I know with this one, Louise Penny, for years, she only published it when she was 45, I think, and that was her first book published. And I believe for years before that, she was always trying to write like a historical mystery and just couldn't do it. And then finally one day, I could be butchering the whole origin story, but I believe this was a case where she just decided one day, I'm going to write what I want to write. And then that's what she came up with. So there's probably a few people in her real life who are, the characters are based on them. So I'm sure there's somewhere out there where she's got a Yvette Nicole friend that motivated that whole character.
We call them mean girls.
Mm-hmm.
She's a mean girl. That's basically what it comes down to. I did want to point out, though, while I was reading it, that when Armand was speaking to I want to say the village people, the villagers at their town hall meeting, and some of his little speech moments to some of his investigators, a little bit of his dialogue felt a little strange to me, felt a little put on, felt a little, am I watching a movie on TV? Like, it didn't, sometimes when he was talking, like he would use phrases like, we're gonna know each and every one of you, and we're gonna know your secrets. And I was like, nobody talks like that. So that part to me felt a little off. Did you notice anything like that? I mean, by and large, he was a wonderful character, and I thought it was a great, he had a great redemption arc and so on and so forth throughout the entire series, or book rather. But some of his dialogue to me felt a little cheesy.
Yeah, I think I wonder if this is just like expectations, or like, going in, oh, it's a long running series about a detective. So I'm thinking this guy's like Sherlock Holmes or, Angela Lansbury, a genius detective. And then he's sort of not really that. Like, he's a good detective, but he doesn't even really solve this case. And so I think a lot of it is just like his things like that you're talking about. Like, he's like a football coach or something like that. He talks and people listen, and that's part of his whole thing. Everyone on his team respects him and does what he says, which that's more his role than just being like a master sleuth.
Right. What did you think, Graham? Did you find any of his dialogue a little?
It was stilted in some ways, yeah, but it was I thought it was very interesting. Like Vince said, he didn't really solve the case. He was almost like an anti-Sherlock in a way, where Sherlock, Poirot, detectives like that are defined by like being brilliant but socially detached or even rude. Gamache is the opposite. Like, he's got empathy, you know. He has his 4 sayings that lead to wisdom. I'm sorry, I was wrong, I don't know, I need help. So it was kind of cool, you know, seeing a masculine lead who is so emotionally vulnerable, you know, like he's reminding people, yeah, he's not some great genius detective. He's out there saying it's okay to say I need help and I'm sorry and so on. So,
and I
You know,
forget.
to go to that part, I forget, and then he's mad at a vet for thinking that, and I'm like, I thought that too.
You did?
yeah.
Like the
There's
way
no
you
way.
say
I
it.
was like, there's no way she thought that he meant I forget.
I mean, that's a good. I mean, that would be a fine thing to learn. And it shows humility to like admit that you forgot the answer.
Yeah, that was he treated it a little bit too roughly at that part, I think.
Yeah, it's like I'm like, I thought that reading it that it was I forgot. Like that's good advice.
So while I was reading this book, I did, you know, I like that Vince brought this up, and I wanted to make note of that, is that Armand really doesn't figure it out. And I thought that was an interesting twist inside the book, because as a reader, the character of Ben stood out so much to me that I was like, it had to have been him, had to have been him, had to have been him. However, as the book goes along, it is the villagers that figure it out. It's Clara, who was Jane's lifelong friend, despite her being like 20, 30 years Jane's junior. She's the one that really rises up and becomes sort of the main character in this book, although it's not really supposed to be about her. Did you find that?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
I know. Sorry, yeah, well, definitely. She ended up being such a big part of it and so on. Yeah, while you know, people might consider it like the Gamache mysteries, but it really is one of those, like I said, an ensemble cast where so many different characters take that role. And yeah, Clara is one of the biggest ones that all kind of involve her and so on. So she was definitely a lot more prominent than Gamache and most other characters.
Yeah, I will just say that I was kind of disappointed in that part.
Oh,
that just like Ben, or just that Ben was never like a suspect, it seems. And it's like he says that he liked to prance around like Robin Hood shooting bow and arrows like the old way, which is like that's what they say is the murder weapon from the start. You know, and it's like, mate, yeah, you couldn't figure out his motive, but like why were you going to this other guy with arrows when, you know, he was right there? He also says he shoots arrows, you know?
so you found that maybe they should have figured it out a little sooner?
Or just like at least like had a misdirection, like where they suspect him and then there's proof that it wasn't him, or you know, whatever. I just thought he was pretty obvious candidate.
Yeah, and I'd listened to it, so I knew it was him, but I'm not one that usually sits back and thinks who did it. I just read as it goes. But it was something interesting I noticed where I knew it was him while reading it, so I'm waiting for them to kind of lean towards that. But instead, while they definitely at no point do they actually push it towards him, he is actually always mentioned in the list of suspects. They're like, okay, who was at the meeting? Who was at the dinner and so on? And he's always mentioned as one, and then they're always like, oh, he doesn't have a motive. So then they just kind of move on from that. So that was kind of the thing that even though Gamache was kind of curious, but you know, 2 old women dying a couple of weeks apart, and one of them being Ben's mother, you do think you might want to look at that a little bit more closely just to see. But
right.
Did you find that the book, I mean, the Croft family, we talk about the Croft family for a second here, because in order for Ben to throw the whole investigation off his scent, there had to have been a certain set of circumstances in order for them to kind of deviate away from him being their number one suspect. But the Croft family actually was it was a matter of convenience for Ben getting away with this, because Ben couldn't have anticipated that the family would be there and pick up the bloody arrow and, you know, stash it away and so on and so forth. Did you feel that the story could have chugged along without the Croft family interjection in the middle of it, and maybe it convoluted the story a little bit? And I say that because I think that if Ben shot an arrow at Jane, he would have just went and found the arrow and gotten rid of it. Like the idea that a whole other family ends up becoming introduced into the story, into the plot. We sort of deviate away from what we're really supposed to be looking at, which is Jane Neal being murdered. And now all of a sudden we're into the Croft family and accusations of abuse and teenagers that are acting out and so on and so forth. Did you feel that the Croft family didn't really add to the book?
I mean, it would have been a much shorter book without them. I did at times feel like, okay, this is kind of out of nowhere. This is, but they did add. There is, like the little subplot with the son, and he's going to go work at the cafe. That's like a sweet moment, I think, in the book. One of my favorite moments. But yeah, and then the tortured dad. So it's like, you can see him, even though he's not guilty. He knows he would do this, and then that makes Gamache refuse to get suspended, basically, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's why he gets suspended, because he refuses to arrest, which just like adds more to his character, and like kind of introduces you a little bit more to his wife off screen, where you're like, she's a quality person. So I think it's like necessary for all the characters' development, but for the mystery itself, it's definitely just like a misdirection.
That's what you think, that the Croft family actually assisted in character development rather than being an integral piece to the plot. What do you think, Graham?
Yeah, it was a very convenient whole situation that, but I think it was necessary for the book. It added to it. As been said, it would have been a lot shorter without. And it didn't, to me, it felt like a part of the natural storyline. It didn't really feel like, oh no, I have to fill up this page and keep the plot moving. I'm going to make something up here. It felt natural, especially with the way the police do in general. They want to try and get a case wrapped up as fast as possible. They're going to go with the first thing, no matter what. So it felt, while convenient, it did feel natural and part of the story. I wasn't sitting there going, oh, this is just a red herring. It felt, and then like Ben said, it progressed the character development along so much better as well. So convenient, but necessary.
Have either of you watched the movie Not Another Teen Movie?
Yes, one of the greatest movies of all time.
Okay, so remember where Janie is this tortured artist and she's throwing paint on a canvas and then she steps back and it's stick figures?
Yeah.
Okay, did you not get that vibe when they were talking about Jane and the big reveal? Because this is what really sets this whole story in motion, that Jane will not allow anybody to see her artwork. She's now 76 years old. She's been painting her whole life. No one's allowed into her house. No one's allowed to see her artwork. And suddenly she decides that she's going to enter this juried art exhibit. And, when they finally reveal this canvas, just the way it's described by Clara, the first thing I thought of was Janie and her stick figures from Not Another Teen Movie. And some of the people on the jury were so quick to say that it's garbage, that it's trash, that it's actually not any good. Did you see in your mind when they were trying to describe this piece what it may have actually looked like? Graham, go ahead.
Yeah, actually, as you were saying that, I was thinking about that. The descriptions Louise Penny puts in, I thought were really well done for everything. Like I love the way as Clara sees the picture for the first time and how she reacts to it, where at first she's like, it's garbage. But then as she's looking at it more, she starts to take in, it appeals to it, and she's like, wait, it's brilliant. And we as readers, you know how art can be, right? Where sometimes, yeah, it takes a bit. So I really got that. And as Clara was describing it, and the others were skeptical, but she was saying it, I was like, I really get this, And then later on, when they go in Jane's house and they start ripping the wallpaper off, and you're seeing all this drawings everywhere and stuff, I thought that I could picture all that perfectly in my mind. I thought it was really well done. All of that, like, descriptions were fantastic.
So why do you think Jane just used her painting to expose Ben rather than just, if they were such good friends, if she and Timur were such good friends, and she had these suspicions that Ben had something to do with her untimely demise, why wouldn't she have just said something? What do you think, Vince? Because I mean, the beginning of the book is her rushing over to the bistro to see Clara and sit down and tell her what happened with the manure on the wall. So if she was kind of, and I don't want to call her a gossip because I think people who live in a small town know everybody's business, why wouldn't she have said something?
I think it may, I mean, it's hard to know a dead person's motivations, but I think she had suspicions, but not proof. And like this painting was going to be her way to, judging by his reaction, maybe, see if it's true. But that's just an idea. But and honestly, based on his reaction, it it definitely was true. He reacted very strongly to that.
I want very much to talk to an art student or an art professor and ask them when Clara is examining Fair Day, the piece by Jane, how she was able to determine that it was altered, and that's how we discover that Ben is the person behind the killing.
Well, it was obviously cobalt blue.
Too.
Which Jane never used cobalt blue paint. Everyone knows that.
This is ochre yellow, and that never happens. Do you think, like, what did you guys think of when Clara was doing that? Did that feel like a little bit like, don't pull your shoulder out with that reach? Or do you think that that's possible, that an art student or an art professor might actually be able to detect, those very small, minute details? What do you think, Graham?
I think so, yeah. Like if it's something I think if it's something you're an expert in, you would know that. And I know random people who will be able to tell you a certain white paint just by glancing at it. Like, oh, you went with the cobalt white or whatever. And I'll be like, sure. I just grabbed a tin of white paint. So, yeah, I think an artist would know that type of thing. Now, for them to pay that close attention to know those specifics in regards to what paint she uses, it could be a little bit of reaching. But no, I took it at face value. I'm like, yeah, artists could do that. Why not?
I mean, if Ben, took himself out of the painting and repainted over it, I feel like the naked eye should be able to notice that the painting's been altered. I didn't think, knowing that Jane never painted in up and down vertical brush strokes would have been maybe the determining factor that the painting had been altered.
Yeah, I can definitely see like the fake character he puts in there though being uncanny, with the rest of her characters. Like every face in the painting was someone in the town, and then he just painted over his face with just like a generic person. And it's like, okay, I think that would really stick out.
It probably would stand out like a little bit, right? Did you feel that the ending felt a little rushed at the end? Like we had this big mammoth book that was really like an examination of this town and its people and all of their stories and so on. And then all of a sudden we were like, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, like very, very quickly towards the end. What did you think? Did you feel that maybe once Ben was discovered, we got through chapter 14 very, very quickly? What do you think, Vince?
One thing I'll say that the book does very well is from the beginning, I'm like, well, it's obviously something with the painting that is going to reveal who did it and their motivation. Like I thought that was pretty obvious, especially with the title of the book being Still Life. And then once you get there, once they figure that out, it's not going to be drawn out process. They're going to figure it out pretty quick because they all know each other and they all know, and they learned her style and all that. Yeah, the book is very good at just like doiling out the details. If they just had perfectly described the painting in chapter 1, I would just be like, I'll flip back to that. I'll figure it out. But
what do you think, Graham? Did you feel like the ending was rushed, or do you think it was an appropriate way to conclude the story?
It was definitely a whiplash reveal to it. It just went from 1 minute, everyone's kind of calm, talking about poetry and so on. Then suddenly Ben goes from, grieving, helpful friend to basement dwelling, attempted murderer in the space of a couple of chapters, all the clues come flying in right at the end on the reader. Definitely felt abrupt, but again, that can be a natural thing, the way things go, right? Like it starts kind of slow, then it just piles on really fast. So it felt abrupt, but I didn't mind it. There's some books where they get a little bit too cute with how they do it and so on. This felt more realistic, the way things spiral really fast.
I have to say, I don't get an opportunity to read a lot of Canadian-centered books. So the references to the Tim Hortons Double Double
Yes.
kept coming up.
Right?
What did you think of that, Graham, as a Canadian? What did it feel like for you reading this going, oh, we never hear about Tim Hortons?
I love that. There's actually we'll have to make it a book club pick one. I'll have to look up the book. There's one that's actually based. There's a series that's based in Kingston, and so it talks about pubs like the Iron Duke and stuff like that, Wellington Street. So I've only read bits of it. It's a historical one, but it's really neat. So this I really did love that because yeah, you're right. I read mostly American books or UK books, which is fine, but it was nice seeing Kingston references and pizza, and being like, oh, I can relate to that type of thing. So I really dug that. It added an extra, point to me on the book.
Before I invite you to rank this book out of 10 bells, I just want to make sure that I'm also pointing out the imagery in this book, because I thought Louise Penny did a phenomenal job. I want to direct your attention to the middle of the book, maybe chapter 6 or 7, but she's talking about how people die in a small town, and that, if you're from a city, you might have concerns about, your safety and so on and so forth. But when you're in a small town, you could die from drowning, from skiing, from all sorts, like a bear attack or whichever. But it wasn't just simply that she was prattling off a list of how people die in a small town. She was using phrases like the current of the water grabbing the ankles of small children. And that was the line that she used. So she didn't come straight out and say they drowned. She's using this sort of imagery. And she also had made, while we were talking about dying from skiing, she was talking about how the winter pulls you down an avalanche outside of your expertise and tips your skis. And I was like, whoa, like I could actually, I know what she's saying based out of this incredible metaphorical way of her imagery. And I thought that was such a theme throughout the whole book. You were really involved in the way that she set the scene, described the scene. It wasn't just characters, it was phrases, euphemisms, all of these sort of things. She was really, really excellent at imagery. What do you think, Vince?
Yeah, I mean, poetry is such a big part of this book. All the characters are into poetry and they quote poetry. I always think that's like the craziest thing. Like, I mean, I'll enjoy a poem, but the way people just have them memorized. I know it's a book, but like when people are like, "Oh yeah, that reminds me of this poem," and here's exactly all 8 verses of it. That's always a thing to me. But so it's not only the characters, but it's also Louise Penny herself, because she clearly loves poetry and she's trying to write it, and she does a very good job with her prose that way.
What about you, Graham?
Yeah, like with Vince as well. Like the poetry's interesting because it's not just thrown in there, right? It's used as part of the story. Like even early in the book, when Jane looks at Ben and quotes W.H. Auden, and she says like, "Evil is unspectacular and always human, and shares her bed and eats at her own table," directly at Ben, letting him know, "I know what you did," type thing. So I thought that was. It wasn't just in there for the sake of it, even though they are poetry people. It all was tied into the book. It reminded me of one of those books where a quote opens up each chapter and that sets the tone for that chapter. And that was kind of what it was like, where the poetry was just interjected throughout the story and tied into it. So I thought that was really cool.
I have a question for both of you very, very quickly. Did Ruth never get married because she was in love with Jane? Vince, go.
Oh, geez. Maybe.
It's what I deduced. It's what I deduced.
Yeah,
from the story.
That would make sense. Why she ruined her marriage too. Potential marriage.
I wonder that perhaps maybe, and when Ruth is describing Andreas, the gentleman who wanted to marry Jane, she sounded very jealous. What do you think, Graham?
That's good.
I think she was just looking out for her. I didn't get the vibes there from that. I felt more like she was interfering for her benefit, and it's more just because of the character of Ruth. I feel like she's someone who thinks she would know better, so I think that was just
Yeah.
more her doing that than anything else.
I don't know, gentlemen. I don't know. I disagree. I think when we were reading, Ruth's wrap up and discussing how she found herself in a drawing on the wall with her pigtails and how Jane always greeted her with a kiss, I think there was an undertone. Here.
I'm sure there's some fan fiction out there that you can read to satisfy
Yeah,
that.
Maybe I'm gonna write it. Maybe I'll write it
Get you on
myself.
There you go.
All right,
There you
guys,
go.
out of
Mosh
10
Reddit.
bells. Vince, what would you rank this book?
I would say 6 out of 10 bells for me. It's a good mystery, a good story. I do think some of the things that got me in trouble, the cozy elements to me, just don't really work for me, where it's just like, not only is it a small town that's not on a map and every character is unique, there are times where they have conversations that like real people don't have. That's supposed to be a part of it, where you're like, oh, I'd love to live in this town and talk about books and poetry all day. Those people exist, but I just don't know if they exist in this hypothetical small town. I think there would be some Trump flags in that small town. And then there is some stuff that's like a little too stereotypical for me, especially like the two gay guys who own the cafe. Like there's one point where they're like, "Oh, it's raining men." It's like, okay, come on.
That's because one of them was Pam from Modern Family. I swear to God.
Oh
every
yeah,
time I
that's
read
probably
part,
the
yeah.
inspiration for that one.
So 6
But
bells.
yeah, 6 bells. I think it's probably more interesting as a series as it goes on. But just for me, this one was just pretty good.
All right. Graham, what do you think out of 10 bells?
I'd say 7. I could lean towards 8. It was good. It was enjoyable. It made me want to go back to the characters. Like we pointed out, the actual mystery aspect of it all was lacking somewhat. There was a few issues. So I'd say it's a solid 7, maybe an 8. It reminded me of, and anyone who hasn't watched it, is Corner Gas, like the whole small town setting and stuff like that. So if you like Three Pines, Corner Gas is a Canadian show that is also set in a small town, and no one gets murdered on it, but it gives that kind of vibe and well worth watching.
I love the episode where the Tragically Hip are a band that practice in his garage.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Yeah.
Yay for Corner Gas.
I'm
going to give
rest in peace.
Yes, absolutely. I'm going to give this, I'll give it 6 because I did enjoy the book. I did find it to be a little clunky. That was one thing that, for someone like myself, like if it's going to be a thick book, I want every part of it to have purpose. And as we were mentioning earlier, clearly I didn't think the Croft family served enough in this book for me to be like, okay, like I get why this is veering into a 359-page book. I felt it could have been surmised a little bit faster. I like that Vince kind of changed my perspective a little bit, that it actually, the Croft family were there to help us with Gamache rather than necessarily the plot. So I thought that part was cool. So thanks for that, Vince. But I'm going to give it about a 6 bells out of 10. I think that's fair.
Yeah, it's just interesting because it's I think she clearly had a series in mind. So much, like you said, with the length, like so much of it is not only serving this book, but trying to serve a longer series, and sometimes those things clash.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think, while you're reading it, you can go, oh, I could see the spinoff here on Clara and Peter. I could see the spinoff here with the Croft family or with Ruth or even with Myra. Like there were so many different people that you could probably go ahead with. But yeah, it was a little clunky for me, so I'm going to go with 6. So now for next month, we're giving the reins back to Vince to pick our next book. And Graham, I have to say this. The reason I don't pick these books is because I'll just end up picking a book I've read.
I get that, yeah.
So this is
you
really
don't want to
fun for me.
You don't want to take a risk. You don't want to put yourself out there and have pick something that we all hate and have to rip
Oh,
off
that's
the
a
podcast.
maybe this is a self-conscious thing for me. I'm afraid
I
you guys
guess,
are gonna
yeah,
know what I
yeah.
like to read.
Yeah, you might pick
Okay.
out another Barbara Kingsolver book.
And it's not gonna be a Barbara Kingsolver. All right, Vince, what do you got for us?
You know, I had a little short notice of picking out a book, but this is one. It's kind of inspired by my two co-hosts here. It's called "Once There Were Wolves" by Charlotte McConaughey. It takes place in the Scottish Highlands and features two women reintroducing 14 gray wolves into the environment and some of the captivating way that goes down and consumes her life.
Say the name of
So
the
I
book
thought
again.
it's called "Once There Were Wolves."
Once There Were Wolves. All
So
right.
it sounds
Yeah,
pretty good. It has really good reviews. It's from a few years ago, from 2020.
yeah, it won a
But,
few awards, right? It won the
Yeah, I believe it did.
Indie Book Award, Book of the Year, and the Davitt Best Adult Novel Award. So, award-winning book, can't beat that.
Wow, Graham, that was pretty fast off the top of your head.
I know books.
Hey, if it's in the Scottish Highlands, he's like,
Yeah, yeah. I'm an encyclopedia for books set in Scotland.
yeah.
Well, thank you so much once again to my two co-hosts, Vince and Graham of booknotification.com, for joining me on this one. One more time, we were covering Louise Penny's Still Life, a great book, recommended. A lot of booknotification.com readers read it, loved it, and you should absolutely give it a go. Vince, out of 10 bells?
I'm gonna go with a light 7 over the 6. I'm switching it up. Light
Nice.
7.
Oh, you're gonna make me look like the jerk face. I see how this
Yeah,
is.
that's
All
right.
right, Graham, for yourself.
I'm going to move from 7 to 8 because, so.
You guys are terrible. And I'm going to give it a 6, although I will say, oh man, we need to get those Dancing with the Stars paddles.
Yeah, you're going to be getting the hate mail next now.
I was just between 6, 7 the whole time, so.
But it does make me want to read
done.
the next Louise Penny's book, so definitely
Good.
recommended. Make sure you pick that one up, and make sure you are checking out booknotification.com if you want to find out all that's good with books. We've got everything from podcasts to blogs to your daily book releases, and you don't want to miss out. So head on over to booknotification.com, sign up, subscribe, and get notified. Thanks so much, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.